the passionate leader, because leadership without passion is just a title.
Meeting. We got a collapse in the garage. Get the squad back equipment in here. We got an I-beam gone to a firefighter.
Get that island urgent. Transmit a second along.
This is where titles end and leadership begins.
Ask yourself, what battle are you fighting that nobody else can see? What pressure are you carrying that you have convinced yourself is just part of the job? And if you are leading others, are you strong enough to admit that you're human too? This is part 2 of a crossover conversation with Kevin
Whitsell,
host of A Silent War Within. In part 1, I stepped into his arena, and now he steps into ours. Kevin serves as an operations manager for a children's hospital. He has spent 20 years in EMS, beginning in the fire service in 2006, earning his EMT in 2008, and his medic in 2014. In December of 2025, he moved from supervisor to operations manager, carrying with him hard-earned lessons about leadership, faith, and responsibility. Kevin is open about striving to follow Jesus through failing often. That is not weakness. That is awareness. It is the posture of somebody who understands that growth comes from humility. He once avoided difficult conversations. He now believes that stepping into them with clarity and compassion is one of the highest forms of leadership. He is deeply passionate about mental health and first responders because he knows a silent war is real. Not theoretical, but real. He leads for his people. He sacrifices so they can perform their mission at the highest level. He has learned not to take things personally. He has learned to slow down and sit with normal human emotion inside instead of trying to numb it. Shaped by 2 decades in the field, Kevin brings depth, conviction, and honesty into the conversation. So before we continue this crossover, ask yourself, are you fighting a silent war you refuse to acknowledge? Are you avoiding the conversation that could free somebody on your team? And are you leading from ego or leading from mission? Let's carry our conversation forward with Kevin. What's going on, my man?
Hey, JP. Good to be here with you. Good to have you on our show. And I love the part 2 and the intro. Thanks, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and this opportunity gives us the opportunity to really show people what effect they actually really can have on others, and such. So we gave, a heavier overview, but for our listeners that, unfortunately don't follow your platform yet, but they will, kind of walk us through, where you got to where you were and what really made you launch your platform.
So really, and I love that JP refers to my time in service as decades. That makes me feel great. But over the first 10 years of my career, I really had bad calls, but never really felt like anything that really by 2016, 17, I thought I was invincible. Nothing bothered me. I never had the breakdown other coworkers, that I had seen have. And I sat back and I thought to myself at that time, like, dude, I've seen in 10 years, I was naive, obviously. And I said, I've seen it all. I've done it all, and somehow I got surprised one day. 2017 comes around. We get a dispatch call for an unresponsive patient, which everybody in the county that I worked for somehow seemed to be unresponsive. That was just dispatch's favorite terminology to use. They didn't give an age, obviously the address. So we take out lights and sirens all the way across the county, 25-minute response time. And I can hear in our ambulances, we had a fire radio and a EMS dispatch radio. So I could hear the fire department starting to roll out that were much closer than us. They got on scene, and over the radio, I hear this fireman that I'm familiar with, his voice, say, do you want us to bring this kid to your ambulance? Well, the thing to know about me, 2017, I'd been a paramedic for 3 years. I like to be very prepared. So if I knew I was going for a pediatric, which we don't deal with just a ton, I would have a piece of wide tape on my leg with all the drug dosages for that approximate weight if they gave us an age. So I like to be prepared. I get on scene, and prior to getting on scene, I didn't know it was a kid until 4 or 5 minutes before scene. So I didn't have time to do any of that. I was underprepared. And once I get on scene, they give me this lifeless 4-year-old body that has drowned, and I had to pause because I felt something I had not felt before. This kid reminded me of my daughter. This kid's hair looked like my kid's hair. I could hear the parents, that horrible, horrible scream that we all know, in the background. And I went to work. I had to push all that aside, and I went to work. We wound up just before getting this child to the hospital, got a pulse back, and so return to spontaneous circulation. And I have time. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I have time just to give the ER a call and say, hey, I just got a pulse back on this kid. Because previously I had called in as we left scene and told them, hey, we're coming with a drowning victim. I don't think this is going to be a good outcome. Told them the age and everything we were doing, and we'll be there in 20 minutes, just so they could have ample time to prepare. Because that's hard on a healthcare staff too, right? And we roll in, and of course, after that 5-minute call that, hey, we got a pulse back, there's a team waiting for me on, kind of in the ambulance bay. I commonly refer to it as the tarmac. I don't know why, but there's a team waiting for me out there. And they take this kid and they're doing all the things. Well, little did I know there was a pediatric and neonatal critical care team that was stationed at that hospital. I didn't know any of this. And they had already called and they had come around the corner, and they started treating this child with the level of expertise and the level of just ease that I just did not have. I was so afraid of pediatrics in general, but more so, this particular call had rattled me, and I had not truly been rattled like that before. So after it was over, the parents praised me as this hero. I felt like anything but a hero. I was walking through, did I do everything right? Was there something I could have done better? And I had to go outside on the, in the ambulance bay there, and I had a good solid 5-10 minute cry. I mean, I literally just broke down, and called my daughter to make sure that she was okay and just to hear her voice. That was important to me, in that moment. And thank God I've got a 5-year-old now, and I can only imagine what that would be like, because that would be awful, to kind of relive some of that again.
Yeah.
And I called my wife right after that, and I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I am not okay. I just had this call, and I told her about it, and she said, I'm coming to get you. I said, absolutely. I want you to come get me. I'm leaving after this. I can't do anymore. I'm tapped. So she was at the station waiting for me when I returned, and I left, and that was the last day of my 48-hour shift. So there was a 96-hour period between that. Well, that was my time off to recuperate, and went back for my next shift, acted like nothing was wrong. That was my processing time. Right. And I, thought I had processed, and I pushed it down like I had done probably hundreds of calls before that, and went on because I knew I had a job to do. Then, in 2021, I had an episode, that I just became, over something silly, a silly fight with my wife. I just became a type of enraged that I had never felt before. I mean, JP, so much so that my fingertips were burning. I mean, that's just how mad I was.
Yeah.
I was outside. I was punching my shed. My wife had never seen me like this. So she gathers up the kids, and she's out. Like, she's got to get make sure the kids are safe and make sure she's safe. And she leaves. And as I sat there on my back porch, I was just thinking and just staring out into the nowhere of the wood line there at my property. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? What just happened? I was so taken aback by everything I just experienced. And she came back to the house, and really just drove up, and I was at her window, and I said, I asked her the same question, what's wrong with me? And she's like, I don't know, but you have a definite problem. that I think you need to go and seek professional help for. And that was a big blow to my ego because, like I
Sure.
said before this, I had seen everything, done everything, nothing rattled old Kev. You know, there was nothing.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's what my coworkers kind of call me as kind of the term of endearment. They shortened my name to Kev. So nothing ever rattled Kev. And then all of a sudden, something has rattled me to the point that now we're 4 or 5 years later and I'm here with all this baggage. And I go into my first session of counseling and she asked me, how do you want me to talk to you? And I said, when I'm an asshole, I want you to tell me I'm being an asshole.
Yeah.
You know, be straight with me. Tell me all the things that I'm doing wrong if it's wrong, and tell me the things I'm doing right if it's right. And once we got into some therapy and some EMDR sessions, what I quickly realized is that I had been decompressing for so long. I had been shoving everything down into this suitcase, and finally the hinges couldn't hold it anymore. And when that anger episode happened, that was the culmination of all that cumulative trauma that I had dealt with for so long, finally coming to the surface. Hang on one second, JP.
Yeah.
Hey, dude, you got to go. Because I know you're going to be loud. You got to head out and shut the door. Because I know you. Because you don't know how to be quiet. Okay, well, if you're going to stay there, shut the door and be very quiet, okay? My son is my little buddy. He wants to be
I love
right
it.
on top
I
of
love
right
it.
on top of dad all the time. So sometimes I have to tell him, hey, you gotta
Like a Velcro dogs. I get you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But going back to it, that was the time that the wheels kind of fell off the wagon, and I was shocked by it. And then going into therapy and finding out all the things that I had kind of shoved down was difficult, and it was hard.
Yeah. So was that the I assume that probably was not the start of a silent war within. Was that was just I mean,
no,
that was the start of your war within, obviously.
that
but-
was the catalyst that kind of launched everything in this direction. So 2025 comes around and I got asked from a leadership position to do a podcast that goes out to the hospital staff, that they kind of hear about different departments and what those leaders are doing and kind of what we do. So now that you know that story and that pediatric and neonatal critical care team that came in that day for that child is the team that I now lead, is the exact same team. So in that transition and getting to that spot, I went, and really it's kind of a God story when you think about things happening for a reason. I got a call 3 weeks after that incident in 2017 that said, it was a friend of mine that I'd known for years that said, hey, I think you'd be a great fit for this team. And because I don't like to be afraid of anything, and the fear that I felt in that moment was difficult for me to process, I said, well, we're going to meet these fears head on. I'm going to go do nothing but exclusively pediatrics, and I'm not going to be scared anymore after this is all said and done with. Now, 10 years later, I have promoted to a leadership position within that team. But 2025 happens. I do the podcast. Somebody says, hey, I think you shared some great insights. You should do a podcast. And I was like, maybe I should. Feed my, I think I'd be a great podcaster. Yeah.
Sure.
I kind of had that ego trip for a second. And then I was like, well, what would I do it about? And somebody, again, that same person said, you're always working on mental health stuff here. You're passionate about your own mental health stuff. Why would you not do it on something that you care so much about? And I was like, you know what? You're right. I do have my own mental health journey to share, and I'm sure others do too. Because what I experienced in that time of going to therapy and kind of dealing with my own thoughts and feelings and going through all those old calls and going through EMDR sessions, what I kind of inadvertently realized is that people probably feel the same way that I do right now. And that feeling was loneliness, and that feeling was isolation. And that feeling was a lot of thinking that nobody else in the world is dealing with my particular problem. And in reality, that's a lie, because there's so many people that are dealing with the same issues. And I didn't want anybody to feel the same way that I felt in those moments. And I didn't want anybody. Stop, man. He's just everywhere. You can leave that in. I don't care.
No, dude, it's all part of the show. No, I saw him poke around. He's probably checking out the. He's like, look at the gear in the background.
Yeah. But I didn't want anybody to feel alone. I wanted people to feel like they had a place that it was safe to have these conversations, and that it was okay to talk about it. It was okay to say, "Hey, I'm not doing well." And stop giving the generic answer of "I'm fine" when somebody says, "How are you doing?"
Yeah.
So it was very, very cathartic to start a podcast and to begin to hear other people. And we talked about it at the end of the last recording session, like doing a podcast like this is so cathartic to me as well, because I gain healing from this too. To hear people say, "Oh, I was in a very similar spot, and this is how I dealt with it." And we've acquired just a library of resources from, I think you were episode 57 or 58.
Sure.
And we've had large content creators on who don't talk about their mental health on their platform, but come on my show and share their journeys and their struggles. And you're like, oh, even these guys that are big time. Firefighter Fenton, a huge presence,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Fire department coffee, he come on and shared some very intimate things that I was like, oh, this guy has dealt with it as well.
Yeah.
And you don't think about that when you think about large creators and these people that we almost idolize a little bit, that they have their own struggles that they walk through as well.
And I think where I found is it breaks down. We talked about it in part one, with me, it's breaking down that proverbial line of leader versus peer. And, you can agree that, we can also kind of break that down, I should say, into the thought process of, what we perceive as sort of like the giants, in the circuit or whatever the case is, Firefighter Fenton, everybody knows him, Fire Department Coffee, Firefighter Chronicles. He's the funny bald guy. Right. And, everybody, can look up to and get relief from the comedy and things, like that. And, it's the concept that, when you start to put into context that, again, we really are, I said it in the last one, in part one, we are all going in the same size box. It's either going to be an urn or it's going to be a casket. It doesn't matter. We're still, our time is not infinite. There is a certain time, and unfortunately, we do not know when that hourglass is going to run out, but it is going to run out, and we all go out the same way. So, it's validating is, because I typically give it more of a negative connotation to the word validating, but it is validating to see, and it must be, I'm assuming it was from your aspect of, listen, here I am, thinking you're probably on an island all by yourself, struggling, like, I got to be the most damaged man in America, or the whole world at that matter. Yeah. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh, he had the same problem, she had the same problem, they had the same problem. So it's crazy to see, how things go and, work that way. But it's
hold on a second.
So
I got to
cool.
run him off.
No, he is not bothering me any.
He even knew he was being bad. I said, you got to go. He said, okay.
Oh, okay, fine. No, I love it. It's all for the, for fun family. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, totally off. Did you have Kevin McNeil on as a guest?
I did.
So he was one of our first. Kevin is actually, so I'll give a shameless plug for the Fire and Foliage at the end of this. Mm-hmm. This is because they're a sponsor of our podcast. He is actually going to be one of our presenters at the conference.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
He is, so not sure. So him and I, again, another another person from bringing, platforms together is just the friends and, extended brotherhood family that you get. He actually is now the fire chief of his local fire department. It's this crazy story of everybody that was there basically threw a temper tantrum and was going to quit. And they were going to be left with no fire department. And he actually stepped up and was like, all right, listen, we'll let I'll take over, and so no word of a lie. He's actually, this is more of his story to tell, but he's now their fire chief. And it's actually, I reached out to him and I was like, dude, because he's like, yeah, I got to promote some new lieutenants. And I was like, all right, what can I do to help? And he's like, well, how about, he goes, can you come down and do like any leadership development program? And I was like, oh, I got something for you. So it's just crazy how that stuff works. And he shares a really cool story, and it is the EMDR. He's the first one that clued me into. I love the Granite State. I'm a very proud Granite Stater. I am. I'm a Green Mountain boy by blood, but I am a Granite Stater, by way, by relocation. And New Hampshire is very, very heavy still on the on the CISM end of the world, and not they're a little slower to to get to the ASAP, or the EMDR stuff. And I get it, but the way I look at it is. And Kevin explains it best because he came to our station to do a presentation about they're spotting the signs thing, and it's I love to see new technology and new ways and new methods of getting into people, because we have to. It's just like leadership, where you have to find new ways to make your message work, and it's so funny. I talked about it. It may have been on one of the lives. I'm not really sure. I talk a lot. I'm very much so not the extrovert that I grew up as a kid. But it's, I can say the exact same thing verbatim that you could. But if you're speaking to it to the guys in my firehouse, they're going to be like, gospel. They're you could literally tell them, you shall not brew decaf coffee before 7:13 a.m. or, it's going to be an apocalyptic event. And they're going to be like, did you guys hear what Kevin said? He said, if you don't, we cannot brew decaf until after a certain amount of time. Or, you know what I mean? Or I could go and I could say the same thing to them, and they're like, you're such a bonehead, whatever the case is. So there's a lot to be said about, getting into people's, and I think that's kind of the same way with the EMDR and the ASAP stuff, where
absolutely
it's, we're still very set in it. And one story I didn't share in part one that I'll share, some of the guests have heard it before, is our best wheelman. His name was Dave. I miss him dearly. He possibly one of the shortest bouts with cancer I've ever seen. That he got you name it, he had it. Pancreatic, liver, I believe even blood and bone, if I'm not mistaken. And he was fully diagnosed in January, going through tests, from early December through the month, and then kind of getting things into January. But diagnosed in January, we were announced of his passing on a Monday, when he finally was allowing people to know what happened. And by Friday, we were carrying him out for the funeral home. And he was the best wheelman. Him and his wife Tracy were the first ones to call and reach out to me when I went through my divorce. A fireman's fireman. He's a true brother, and we talk about certain things that sit. And we had just got a brand new truck, and he sideswiped a rock with a truck. Early November time. And as a deputy, I was like, we need to make sure we follow our procedures. Do I think Dave was under the influence of anything? No, but our procedure says we have to go get tested, blah, blah, blah. And it was through that testing that things started to become noticeable. And, when Dave was upset with you, you knew it. And I always appreciated that candor of him, but I could tell that he was upset with me about it, but I didn't realize the level of why he was so upset. And unfortunately, it escalated so fast and, accelerated to such a level that him and I never were able to actually hash it out before he passed. And it's something that, I know in my heart of hearts that we would have, but it's just one of those things that kind of sits with you like, man, dude, like I
Yeah, it
wasn't trying to
does.
hold him accountable because I thought he was under the influence of anything. He was a very proud, recovering addict, from alcoholism. Um, and I knew that he wasn't going to be, but it was our policies and our procedures. And I think there was some anger of, look what this uncovered, and it's caught, whatever the case is. And it is unfortunate, and we miss him dearly, but it's one of those hard leadership things that, people have to realize that sometimes that's the stuff that you have to go through. But, alas, it's kind of going through those things. But man, I love it. So one of the things that you mentioned earlier and in part one was the shifts that you were working when you finally did have your break. Did I catch it correctly that you were doing 4896s?
4896s. That's right.
So do you, or, is there some belief that maybe a longer shift was adding toward the cumulative, trauma that you were feeling because you weren't getting a reprieve? Or do you believe that the 96s actually may have helped in some way, shape, or form to kind of keep you in balance?
So it's funny that you asked this. I was just talking about this with a friend that is also attached to the mental health side of things. And this friend, you guys all know, this is Ashlyn Odell, who is a pretty large content creator herself and has an educational offering now in a library and stuff like that. If you're in like our service, and I was in Senatobia, Mississippi. Hang on one second. I got to go get my other headphones. These just died.
Yeah, no worries. Got to go old school. Yeah.
And everything that can go wrong will, right?
It is what it is, dude. It's funny. I had somebody one time, they had the wireless buds in and their kid picked up their tablet and it stole us and it jumped to them and all that. So then, of course, in the melee, it was actually, unfortunately, it was a great episode, but the audio in Riverside's great for audio editing.
Oh yeah.
But it couldn't do anything to save, because I think what happened is he took his wireless earbud and he put it in his pocket, and you could hear him like bouncing his leg, which is perfectly fine. But so the whole time I hear like this like in the background. I'm like, that'll edit out. Dude, it couldn't. It actually made it worse. I was like, ooh. So I released the episode, but man, it was unique to say the least.
All right. Well, hopefully your editing will be easier for this one. Yeah.
Well, dude, the positive side is you're fortunately so far out that I have plenty of time to do a little bit here and a little bit there. And I love the software. I can't. And unfortunately, if Riverside would like to sponsor either of our platforms, we certainly will be happy to take.
Absolutely.
Riverside is where it's at.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So to the shifts, it's funny because I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to never really do the shift work, the 24s, the 72s, the whatever the case is. I jumped right into the, in our town, we're accommodation department. So it's myself and the chief during the day. And then after the hours of 4, it is a crapshoot of who you're going to get to show up on the volunteer call side. So we kind of cover the business hours during the day.
Yeah.
But I've seen some crazy, like the 24s, and there's a lot of studies out there, like you were saying, as far as what shifts actually, offer the most reprieve. And I never thought much of it. I've always like, 24s must be like the best, but there's, some studies that show that 24s, they really actually don't give you much reprieve. And then, the 48s could, but I could see where, man, if you're on a busy truck and you're getting a ton of med calls for 48 hours, that can, even if they're non-traumatic, it's going to take a toll on you eventually.
Well, I think it's very geographical too. So where I was stationed at, Senatobia, Mississippi, which is a very rural town, we would do 5 to 7 calls a day per unit. And we had 3 units, which doesn't sound like a lot, but there was no hospital in the particular community that we lived in at the time, or serviced. So our nearest hospital was 30 miles away. So that's an hour worth of traveling time, not to mention your on scene time and all the things.
Yeah.
And then the trauma center and the children's hospital is an additional 15, 20 minutes further. So if you're going to any of those or major medical center, you're adding that time. So 5 or 6 calls could be pretty lengthy. So I think that those shifts in that area without a local hospital to take all of the what we kind of categorize as BS, and everybody does it, all the BS calls that you would get. You didn't have that local facility to go drop off the town drunk. So it did get to be long and strenuous, and the first day of being off in that 96-hour off is really the recovery day. It's nothing but for recovery. And then hopefully you have 2 days that are pretty good, and then you're preparing to go back to work on the 4th day. So I think the shift work did definitely have something to do with the cumulative trauma, not to mention we were right next to a busy interstate, Mississippi's thoroughfare, which is I-55, runs north to south, and we were right there on the border of that interstate. So we worked a lot of trauma in the way of wrecks and even people getting hit on the interstate, hitchhikers and things like that would get hit on our interstate. So there was a lot of that really built into that cumulative trauma. Looking back, can definitely see that now.
Yeah. When you did have your break, did you end up going back to work, or did you find that was sort of the end of the being in the medical, like the actual field medical side?
No, I went back to work and then got that call to go to the pediatric team. Went to the pediatric team and continued to work on an ambulance. Now theirs at the hospital-based service was 12-hour shifts, and I found that to be much easier for me. I would do my 3 days a week and then be off for 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I found that to be easier for me to do, but that's just a personal opinion. But yeah, I kept working on an ambulance for, I didn't go into dispatch until 2020.
Okay.
When our son was born, I transitioned to dispatch, just for the, really being able to get off on time and to know what time I was coming to work and knowing what time I would get off. With that, because we're a regional pediatric transport team. So if you get a call 200 miles away, you're going to go on that call if it's 6 o'clock in the morning and you're supposed to get off at 7. That was just the expectation. So now you're off at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. So there were numerous times that I did that, and I was like, you know what, I got to do something different with this new child on the way that I'm going to have to be a father to, in the way that I want to be and be present and available. And because really, just like you said, my real identity is rooted in what type of father am I? What type of husband am I? Am I making myself available for my core people?
Yeah. It's that's the kind of the reality that we all have to fight with sometimes, I think. So I didn't hit on it earlier. We'll double back just a little bit. So your I guess I don't want to call it a gamble, but your decision to stare, that fear in its face of going and working at a children's hospital, has it paid off, or are you still kind of finding that there's still some days that are a little tougher than others?
There are definitely tough days. I'm not going to say there's not tough days. I think in the area that we live in, child abuse is so prevalent, and those are the really tough days. Because we go and get those children, and you have to look these parents in the eye, or the boyfriend of the mama that's just thrown this kid all around the room. Those are tough. Those are still tough. But I think from the baseline of pediatrics, just to lump everybody together, I am much more comfortable. It has certainly paid off, in the sense that, and typically it has, I've kind of lived most of my professional life and my adult life this way. Like if I'm afraid of something, I'm not the guy that's going to run away from it. I want to face it head on. The only thing that was really difficult for me to do that to was the difficult conversations that you mentioned. When I went into leadership, it was very difficult for me to have. I previously in my life have been very conflict avoidant. and going into a job that kind of has inherent conflictual moments in it made me extremely uncomfortable.
I love that phrase, conflict avoided. That may or may not find its way into a TikTok or something. If we're being honest,
Hey,
I love it. It's. But let's be real. I mean, nobody likes to feel uncomfortable. I know I don't, but I also, everybody preaches about it, is you can't grow in comfort either. So it is such a really, it's just weird. Nothing grows in comfort in the least. But I think there's really a lot to that. And honestly, I think your desire to really hit, to face this head on is admirable, to say the least, because I mean, especially given, not only is it admirable as, from one dad to another, one first responder to another, it's admirable because of the field to which it's in. And children are different. I think there's a lot of people that can, there's a lot of followers to the show that can, use the analogy that a lot of stuff that we do, they can compartmentalize because they make it a transaction versus it's me going to your loved one, and it works.
Sure.
Especially if you are in a bigger agency or community that affords the ability where you're not going to know all the citizens. However, like to your example, I could put myself in your shoes. Thankfully, on the fireside, we only do med calls if both ambulances are busy or if it's a working code. But to that, had that been, the call that you had, there's a high likelihood that I may know the family, and then, or that at least somebody within our agency is going to know the family who is experiencing this absolutely traumatic experience. And even sometimes just knowing somebody who knows somebody can be traumatic enough for us on our end of the world, because you just never, it makes it more personal than it does transactional. And you can't make it as simple as ringing up a bag of groceries at the local grocery store versus, holy cow, like this is this and this is this, and so I want to tell you how much I commend you for that, especially in the children's side, because I know that I personally do not have the capability to do that, because especially if it's abuse and stuff like that, I wouldn't survive very long in the field, because I would probably end up meeting a lot of my fellow brothers and sisters on the law enforcement side, because I wouldn't, because kids can't defend themselves, and that's really what adds to it. And truthfully, sometimes it's not fair sometimes, because kids don't ask for that. Nobody really ever does. And so that's awesome. So let's really dive into A Silent War Within. How do we come up with the name, and what have been some of your because I'll be very honest, I think that there are probably some that are out there that are maybe where they are there now where you were then, and they're like, I could probably use the benefit of being a host on a podcast, and they might not understand where to start and things like that. So kind of where did you come up with the name, how you decided what platform you were going to use, and things like that?
So the name, very funny actual story. First thing to know about me is I'm kind of a jump off the cliff guy. If you give me enough motivation, I'm just going to wide open run and jump off the cliff.
Hold my beer.
And there's a respiratory therapist that actually started A Silent War Within with me as my co-host, and life just got so busy that she had to step away and never had the interest to come back. I mean, because first couple episodes we were talking about some stuff that really triggered her, and I think that she finally told me, like, this is too much. But she actually, we were sitting there just think tanking this thing and saying, how do we start a podcast? Where do we go? How do we even do it? And really got into an even deeper conversation than what the podcast was going to be, and started talking about each other's struggle. And she made the reference of this is such a silent war. She said, nobody knows that we're fighting this. None of my coworkers knew about it. And she said, you wouldn't have known about it had I not told you, because it's not something we typically show on the outside. And I was like, hey, we got something here, a silent war. And you talk about it being internal. I said, let's do a silent war within. And she's like, this is great. This is great. And of course, we had tried running through our ideas through AI, and it came up with some names. And we're like, oh, that's corny. I don't like that one.
Sure.
Third alarm fire, all the corny things. And I'm like, I don't like any of this. And she kind of came up with the name, and then we started doing some research and found, again, shameless plug for Riverside. If you guys want to sponsor, we're all open to it. But Riverside came up as one of the first search results when you kind of type in podcast creation. And we started looking at it, and I come from, so very early on in my adult life, I was a DJ and radio station manager. I was one of the youngest managers in the country. You can fact check that. There's numerous newspaper articles from way back. And so I kind of had somewhat of a knowledge of audio and editing and things like that. And really looking at Riverside's tools, I was like, hey, this is fantastic. I really like this. So we started that. And then it got to, well, hey, you need a website. Hey, you need a social media presence. Hey, you need all these things, as we started, looking at other podcast creators and what they had done, and really got to a point to where we were just tuning stuff out all the time. And it really was fun at first. And then I think probably, and this is an additional story for you, but probably 5-6 months ago, it got really overwhelming. Because as you mentioned, if you're not careful, this whole content creation, podcast creation becomes a second full-time job. And I was to the point where I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. This is a lot. I love the podcast. I love doing it. But all the extra is just tough. So I had a dream one night, and it was a girl that I had not talked to in 5 years. We had worked together at an EMS station for some time. Great paramedic. She's awesome. She takes such good care of people. And it was a dream, and in this dream, I was handing her a check. Now, obviously, my motivation was never to make money. I didn't care about being famous. I didn't care about any of the other stuff. But my real motivation was to help others. And if something came from that, great. Didn't care either way. But in this dream, I was handing her a check, and something in my spirit told me, you have to call her. As soon as I woke up, something in my spirit said, call Angel. So I reached out to Angel Deaton, who's now our social media coordinator and scheduler, and she was on board 100%. She'd been a vocal fan of the show from the time that from the time of its inception, really. And me kind of taking to my personal Facebook outlets and TikTok outlets to announce that we're going to do this, right? And she jumped on feet first. I mean, she just loves everything about the show. She loves everything about us. And she's actually making her, now I'm not sure, I have a general idea of when you'll release this, but she's actually making her host debut. She's actually going to be on the show as a host.
Awesome.
In our recording tomorrow. So we're super excited about that. She's going to get behind the mic and try her hand at it. Because when I had my health issues just a few weeks ago, she jumped on and made a video letting everybody know that I was going to be out or whatever. To great response. I'm really appreciative for our listeners and guests checking on me and all the things that people do when they hear somebody sick. But she has just been absolutely amazing and really took the show to a new level that I could not achieve on my own. Because when she came in, one of the things I struggle with is telling people yes. I will overbook myself to no end. And I was telling her what the schedule was like, and she said, well, share your calendar with me. So I shared it with her, and she said, you cannot keep doing this. she said, you are going to burn out. The reason you think you might not want to do the show anymore is because of this. Like you have 5 people scheduled in a week to interview. Like, why are you doing this to yourself? And I was like, I don't know. That's just how I operate. And she's like,
yeah, because it's fun.
yeah. And she said, absolutely not. So she completely come in and took over the scheduling, took over the, I'll send her somebody from TikTok or social media that I've found.
Yeah.
Or even people that I'm close to. And I'm like, hey, what about this one? And she's like, I'll reach out to them. And she does everything. So she really took a lot off of my shoulders.
That's
cannot
awesome.
speak highly enough. And then Jason, who you just met, our other co-host, came in probably, he said a month on our part of the show. In reality, it was middle of May.
Okay.
When I got sick, he shot me an email and said, hey, I would love to help any way that I can. And he was a guest on the show. So from my hospital bed in my 15-day hospital stay, I was like, hey, Angel, this person says they want to help, and sent it to her. And the first episode that I got to edit, because even through my illness, I was doing some editing.
Sure.
The very first episode that I saw, I was like, he's got to be on our team. And then Michaela, who is family to me, she's my wife's cousin's, one of those far off.
Sure. Yep.
But we kind of came up together, and I've been married for the last 12 years, and we've kind of been around each other for that length of time. So it's not like a distant thing, really. I reached out to her after Kim, my first co-host, said she just didn't have the time to do it anymore. And I was like, hey, I think you'd be great at this. What do you think?
Yeah.
And she jumped on. So I've got a team of four people. We all have been through the peer support training, so we offer that as well.
That's awesome.
And we have numerous people a week, reach out to each one of us and need something different that they feel like that person could offer them. Michaela's a nurse, so she's kind of the healthcare side.
Yeah.
I'm a paramedic. Jason's a firefighter. Angel is a paramedic and is on a volunteer fire department. So she's kind of got, really our whole team has just got different dynamics
That's
to
so
each
cool.
person. And we really have built a phenomenal team. I can't speak enough about, and it wasn't me building it. It was having them dropped in my lap at different times that I needed somebody.
It's divine intervention, honestly, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, what other way to look at it? So what's on the on the horizon for Silent War Within? Where's the sky look right now? Like where are we pointed at right now?
So awesome things happening in our world that I'm really excited about. So I started actually writing for Dark Horse Press, which is a Mississippi-based media company. They have like something close to 100,000 followers, really more so in the local area. And they wanted me to write a day in the life of a medic, but bring it from a mental health perspective, what these calls actually did to me, what I realized in these calls. And that has been really cathartic to write. I think I've written 5 or 6 of them so far. And even retelling the story in print version has been one of those things that make you go, oh, that was one of those I stuffed. Like that was really tough. And I didn't realize it then.
Yeah.
But now looking back and talking about it, I'm like, I see it now. I see where all that stuff kind of built up. So we're doing that. I'm doing that. And then myself and Jason, we do public speaking. Jason, because he's partnered with us, I plug him all the time. He's got a note from Dad, which really focuses on fatherhood and manhood.
Oh, yeah.
He does coaching as well for that. Michaela is full-time nurse, so she don't have a lot of time to do any extracurriculars. But all of us are doing something that is helping the community that we have kind of built in our listeners to really thrive. The public speaking is probably one of my favorite things to do because, and I've done a few of them, but I have this whole presentation that is about that drowning incident and what it did to me and what it taught me and what I learned through therapy after having an event that was so traumatic, not just to me, But obviously, when you have a break like that, there are collateral damages.
Mm-hmm.
I had to rebuild trust in my wife that I'm not going to hurt you. Even though I have that inside of me, I had no intention of hurting you or the children or anything like that. She was just trying to keep it safe. But there's a trust that's broken there because she's never seen that type of aggression.
Sure. Yeah.
So she's seeing a version of a man that she didn't know existed. So there's a lot of collateral damage when you stuff everything down and let it finally explode. That I had to learn from. And that learning process was difficult for somebody who historically can be a little egotistical at times and can be a little selfish at times. And going through that, it made me much more humble, much more aware of my own mental stability and where that line lies. One of the scariest calls I ever had was this girl that had a very traumatic event and her brain just shut off. She was completely catatonic. And I was always fearful that that was going to happen because I think everybody's brain has that switch that when it flips, it's off. And there's some traumatic event for everybody out there that can flip that switch. And knowing that, I wanted to go out and speak to the community about, hey, this is the time where my switch got really close to flipping off. And it has been met with a great reception. Because I think people relate to it. I think that our community relates to it, and getting to write things and watching Jason do his thing and pour into men is amazing. Watching Angel kind of coordinate all this has been one of the joys of my life because she just does such a phenomenal job and handles it so well. So, I mean, everybody's doing something that is just moving much further toward that mission, and offering peer support the way we do has been one of the greatest things that we could have done. It's such a rewarding experience to wake up in the middle of the night and just happen to check your phone and there's a message that says, I had a gun in my hand and had plans and I found your show. And I listened to the first episode, and something in that episode changed my mind, at least for the moment. And it made me go on and say, well, what else has this guy got to say? And that's huge. That's huge because never did I think that I would have that type of influence. And in reality, when you're putting things out to the public, you absolutely have the potential to have that type of influence on someone's life.
Yeah. I think it's funny as you were talking about, seeing Angel really help you out. I've seen it through our the First Do project, and seeing something that, again, started off as might have been JP's, brainchild, but to see people share that same amount of passion and drive is so fun. And it's just so, it's just this evolving cycle of just, their enthusiasm fills and feeds mine, which feeds theirs, which feeds mine. And it just keeps going, round and round and round. Dude, that's awesome stuff. I think, as we kind of bring the show to a wrap, couple more questions that kind of just popped into my little brain, so to speak, is what have you found, since kind of going through, therapy and your EMDR stuff that really sort of helps, so I kind of a double part question. Have you been able to now recognize when you're starting to get to that point where, it's getting a little heavy? And if so, what do you do to kind of bring yourself, to reground yourself, in life?
So, I think that one of the things that I had to realize that, and it took some time, was me kind of acknowledging that maybe I'm not the image of normalcy. People many times don't know how to frame that normal word. That can mean a ton of different things. But my image of normal was something I had to deal with. And finally coming to the realization that, hey, maybe I'm not my image of normal. Maybe I'm some other image of normal that I paint from here on out. And I think that when I started to acknowledge that, I started to notice the things that I did and how my body would start to respond when I would get to that level of, hey, this is too much. So for me, it's the pit feeling in your stomach and the sweaty palms, and you're starting to get angry about something. Fill in the blank. It can be a number of things.
Mm.
And once I start to feel that, I know that for myself, I have to step away and I have to take a minute to take a breath. And to plug a guy that I really got plugged into long ago. I wish if he even happens to see this, I wish I could have him on my podcast, even though we're small and he's huge with millions of followers. There's this guy named Jefferson Fisher that really taught me. He's a communication expert, and he taught me the value of that there's so much power in the pause. And when I want to say that harmful thing or I want to say that hurtful thing, take a breath. Just take a breath. Or when people say something negatively to me, I will visually, with my eyes, look on the ground for a second. And what I am envisioning is that thing that they just said fell on the ground and it's flat. There is nothing that it can do to me if I just look at it in that way. So I think that some of those mental games that you can set up for yourself and those mental kind of hashtags, if you will, since we live in such a hashtag society.
Sure.
Just envisioning that on the ground and knowing that that can't do any physical harm. Because what the brain does is when you have some type of traumatic event or you have some type of physical harm done to you, you have that thing said to you that's going to set you off, the amygdala stores that and puts it in a place that says, this is dangerous. You have to either fight or flight, right? So when you start to train your amygdala, don't store that. Don't do that. And you take that breath and you take that pause and you just let that sit for a minute. It is so beneficial. And I didn't learn that at therapy. I learned that from some guy online.
Right.
So
Crazy.
Jefferson Fisher was huge for me, as well as going back and telling some of these practices to my therapist and her going, well, that's absolutely healthy. That's great. So it's really finding what works for you. But for me, it is that pause. It is that breath. It is that letting that thing lay on the ground and stepping away and going, hey, that's not for me. That was coming from a place that is their problem and not.
Oh man, that's mint. So I'm going to give you our last question. It's not even mental health. It's leadership based. It's what we give everybody to end all the shows. It's the only real scripted part of the show other than the ask yourself intro. So it's typically firefighters. So we're going to pull it into your realm. So make it fit. New individual walks in and listen, I want to start my path down the leadership road. Managerial road, leaders, whatever the case is. What would be your one pure, unadulterated, and unfiltered piece of advice for that individual to set them up for success?
I can tell you what I would say, and then I'll tell you what I would tell them after that for success. My immediate reaction is, I hope you don't desire to be liked, because
it's true.
Many times in leadership, you're not going to be liked. But if you can conquer that hurdle and get past the need to be liked that we all kind of innately have, we all want to be liked. I think the biggest piece of advice is you have to be honest and you have to be open and you have to be willing to accept that you're not always right. Just because you're in a position that sometimes carries the weight of I have to be right, it's okay to say I'm wrong, and it's okay to say I don't know sometimes. Now, that should always be followed with, but I can find out, but I can try to make it better, but I can do X, Y, and Z. Those statements should never be left to their own devices, but certainly really be honest and really be transparent and really be willing to accept responsibility.
Pure gold, my man. All right. So this is the more important part of the entire show. Where can our listeners learn how to reach out to you, follow you, where they can, contact and all of that very important stuff?
Absolutely. Love this part. The shameless plug part is what I call it on our show. I love it. So Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, on all the platforms, we're a Silent War Within. The only one that is different is Instagram. And that's a Silent War Within 901, which is just the area code for Memphis, which is where we're kind of based at. That's the only one that's different. I don't know why we chose that one to be different, but it is. We're also on YouTube. You can catch a new episode of our show every Friday. There's over 65 hours worth of stuff that you can go back and listen to from previous interviews. And to me, they're all really good. I'm a little biased. But really the hub of all that information I just gave, and the one thing for you to remember if you want to get to us, is silentwarwithin.com. That has all the links to everything that you could need. If you need peer support, there's a reach out box there that you can get in touch with us. All of our personal emails are listed there. We are always available 24/7. Somebody will reach back out to you. It is not something that will sit in an inbox for days. We all get notifications when something comes in.
Beautiful. My man, Kevin Whitsell. Did I say it? Did I do it right?
Hey, there you go.
Hey, there it is. I've been shitting bricks for the last hour and in a minute, trying to make sure I can get it right. Brother, I thank you so much. I'm glad you're on the mend.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And very, very, humbled to be on your show. So as we said at the beginning, everybody, this is part two of a crossover event between the Silent War Within and the Passionate Leader. If something today in today's episode stuck, don't just sit on it. Share the episode. Don't give us that lie. I know something today stuck. Everybody learns something from every show. So share the episode. Don't be that guy. If you want to be part of a deeper conversation, follow, like, share, and subscribe to the Passionate Leader and a Silent War Within across all of the platforms. If you want to be part of a deeper conversation, reach out to us, become part of our Discord group. We have dropped the idea of Patreon. I see no reason to try to make $1 on getting people to get, in the same room to conversate. So reach out to JP at thepassionateleader.com if you want the links to the Discord Passionate Leader side of the world. Be the leader that you were looking for when you first joined the fire service. And as always, lead with passion, serve with humility, and leave no room for bottom feeders. Until we meet again, everybody, stay safe.